Rishi Sunak says he has a plan and it's working after the 2 by-election results. What is that plan, and is it really working?
Well, I have to go to you first, Robert Goodwill, I'm afraid.
Well, obviously the plan is to get the economy back into fettle, as we say in Yorkshire, so we can reduce taxes. And, the main target was to get inflation down. Inflation's now at 4%, and much to a lot of people's surprise, it stayed at 4%. And I think in due course, interest rates will come down, which will mean that the government will have to spend less on servicing its debt, and people's mortgages will hopefully get cheaper. So, the economy is coming round, and although we're in a technical recession, that's nothing like the sort of recessions we saw at the end of the Brown government when the banks were in crisis, or indeed, when the whole country went into lockdown. So, the forecasts seem to be that the economy is going to get better. It's turning round, and I'm confident that people will feel a little bit better by the summer.
But how can you say it's turning round? Well, we are now in recession, which we weren't before, and we're not going to be able to come out of recession until the middle of the year.
Well, it's not a very deep recession. In fact, a lot of the pundits and the economists that were analysing the situation was basically saying, well, don't panic, guys. This isn't like recession we've had before. This isn't going to go on for years and years. And, you look at the unemployment levels, we've still got very high levels of employment. Unemployment's still below 4%. In my constituency, we're still seeing investment coming in, a lot of jobs being created. So, I think it's a case of sort of don't panic, Mr. Mannering. Yes, we're in a technical recession, but we're not in the sort of financial crisis that would mean a chance of the Exchequer having to make brash decisions and make things probably worse in the short term.
The budget is going to be key, isn't it? Because Jeremy Hunt has got to get that right, and that really is the last chance saloon for the Conservative Party, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I think it is. I mean, obviously, I get the state pension now, and that's going up by 6.5%, which is honouring our triple lock. So the pensioners hopefully will feel a bit better. But I'd like to see some tax cuts, particularly for the lowest paid. I mean, when we came to power in 2010, you started paying tax at 6,500. It's now well over 12,500. So I think if we're going to make those who are struggling most feel a little bit wealthier, we need to take more people out of tax. And on top of the reduction in national insurance, I think that should help people cope with some of the pressures that I know a lot of people are facing. Even Rachel Reeves says she dreads the bills coming in at the end of the month.
Don't we all? Caroline?
Well, yeah, and the fact is that whilst energy prices have reduced, they're still way up beyond where they were in 2019. And for a lot of people, not just those who are at the, low income and people I work with in my work around fuel poverty, but even above that, affordability for energy bills is still a big worry. But it's also the general cost of living as well that people are finding. And, Martin said, about Rishi Sunak had a plan. Yes, he had a plan to reduce inflation, but he also had a plan around growth. And we've not really seen any sign of that. And all the gossip and the briefings around the next budget around tax cuts, you've got to pay for tax cuts somewhere. You've got to pay for them somewhere. And the public are not stupid. They are also thinking about, well, hang on, we need to make sure that we support some of our public services because they were cut dramatically from 2010 to 2015. And we've had a game of catch-up ever since. Increased police numbers, increase the money to schools, put some more money back into this. It's all catching up from some of those decisions that were made from 2010 to 2015. Nobody wants to pay more tax than they feel they have to, but they also want to make sure they've got those public services that they cannot buy private to pay their way out of to make sure they can support their families. And the clock is ticking, Robert. There is very little time to turn this round, and that was shown, I think, in the by-elections last week.
Labour, though, don't seem to have a credible alternative. If you want to get public services back on track, that will cost extra money, and there's nothing really in the Labour programme to suggest that they're going to provide that.
I would agree with you that actually some of the plans around what money is actually going to be spent, Labour's going to have to be probably clearer about that. But what they have said, which is important for the Labour Party, I know only so well, is to show that they understand that throwing money at things is not the answer either. And that was one of the things that led to us losing in 2019 and actually in 2017 as well under Jeremy Corbyn's leadership. So they have committed to keep within the spending plans. It's a bit deja vu from 97 when I first came in. But also, they do have some plans about how they would like to grow the economy, not in 1 year, but in a steady course over 5 years, 10 years. And I think people are listening to Labour and giving them a hearing. But there's no doubt about it, Iain. Whoever wins the next general election, there is not a lot of cash floating around. What we need to see is value for money. And when we spend money on policies, we make them work and we deliver. I think people want to hear more about delivery than just another big ticket item, which is why I think actually Rachel Reeves's decision, the Labour Party's decision, to move away from a 28 billion a year spending headline was a good thing, because to be honest, in that space on energy and on getting to net zero, we need more focus on the delivery of the money that's already going into this area.
Natasha, Devon.
I mean, it always fascinates me that people hark back to 2010 and that note that was famously left by the...
You're going to do it anyway.
Well, no, because when you look at the amount of debt we are currently in, it is dwarfing the amount of debt that we're in 2010. And so we're going to need a bigger note. And so the idea that Rishi Sunak, who... I was listening to Carol Vorderman on a podcast, our other LBC podcast, and she was saying how the amount of money that was squandered on PPE contracts in that Tory Lane fast track that didn't even work would be enough to give every single junior doctor a 35% pay rise over a decade. And Rishi Sunak was Chancellor of the Exchequer when that happened. So the idea that he is telling us to trust him, and telling us to trust him when the plan seems to be to lower taxes, when look at the state of everything. Look at the NHS, look at education. Everything is crumbling and it needs investment. How can you possibly say trust us, given the scenario that we face ourselves in? I think it's ludicrous to say we're going to do more of the same because it's clearly working. I feel gaslit.
But do you, even though you probably don't agree with it, do you see that he does have a plan?
No, because inflation has nothing to do with him, is it? Inflation ebbs and flows.
Well, it wasn't
anyway.
when it went up, but it is now. It's coming down.
What he promised us was growth, which I've yet to see.
Angela.
Well, look, I think a lot of what I was going to say was already covered, so bye. See ya. But so I won't sort of bore the listener by repeating it all, but I would say something sort of spooling back to the actual specific question, which is the appearance of a plan. I think one of the problems is aside from all the external factors that have created issues for us, which are beyond any party's control, be it the war in Ukraine, be it a global recession, be it all the COVID, the coattails of COVID, etc. I think part of the issue with the Conservative government at the moment is there is a lack of, the optics are all wrong, because there seems to be so much infighting and so much squabbling and so much lack of a cohesion. I mean, only today the papers were full of stories about the prospective leadership contest. You know, it's sort of letting the mistress in before the wife's got divorced. It's not a good... That was an absolutely torturous analogy. I'm really sorry, but
What a charming analogy.
But for these prices, this is as good as it gets.
The husband.
Yes, indeed. How terribly egalitarian of you, Iain. But the point is, I think part of the problem for the ordinary layperson who is perhaps not, no pun intended, invested in how interest rates play off against inflation, don't understand the whole concept of the fiscal ebb and flow of the economy. I mean, I'm married to an accountant and it baffles me. Is that it's how it looks...
Is that one of your better decisions in life?
Well, I don't know. I'm 33 years old. It's kept a roof over my head.
I think marry a plumber
children.
if you can is good life advice.
Marry a plumber?
I would say...
Well, this conversation's taken on a turn.
Accountants are far less boring than you would think, Iain. We are absolute chandelier swingers.
Okay.
We're not.
Okay.
I was just trying to get
Okay.
I was just trying to keep up the gags here. But I would just say very quickly, I would simply say, to come back to the question, when you see, obviously, the small boats crisis, you see, as Natasha said, the issues with the NHS waiting list, and then you top it all with Tory infighting. Even if there's a cohesive plan, the optics are so poor, it's very hard for ordinary members of the public to buy it.
See, I think, the answer to Martin's question, if you have to keep banging on that you have a plan... people then start to question whether you really do. Yeah. It's a bit like when politicians say, well, let me be clear.
Yes,
or so-and-so has been very clear about this. You think, no, they haven't. Otherwise, they wouldn't have to keep saying it.
We need.
Now,